Amanda Shea is no stranger to pediatric departments and hospital stays. Her daughter Maisie has spent the better part of her life in hospitals due to a wide array of medical conditions. Here is Maizie Rae's story.
Back when we found out we were pregnant, we went in for our 20-week scan, and we kind of knew something was up because I was really, really tiny. And we went in, but in the first 5 minutes, we found the doctor wasn't liking what she was seeing. So within 2 minutes into the scan, she said, "Okay, I don't like what I'm seeing. Go for a walk. Come back in about an hour, and we're going to try it again." So that was the longest hour ever. So we go for a walk, come back, and basically she said that the baby was measuring way too small for the age. So right then and there, we had, my husband and I both had blood work done for infections test control. I had an amniocentesis done right there in the room, and then we were sent home and to wait and to come back, that if I was still pregnant in 2 weeks, to come back. And so that was the, what do you mean if I'm still pregnant? Of course I'm going to be, because I was 20 weeks. So Miss Maisie stuck around, and I came back in 2 weeks, and then we were told the same things. If you're still pregnant, come back. So we just kept coming back because she was not going anywhere. So that started all then. And then at 32 weeks, we found out that the baby had a heart condition. And then we were sent down to IWK. So at the time at the IWK, we found out that there was no heart surgeon available. So we had to make the decision whether to continue the pregnancy in Halifax or pack up our bags and move to Toronto. So very down to the last minute, we decided to go to Toronto, and so we didn't have to do any of the air transfer, and we knew that we were in the right spot, the right time, if we needed intervention. So we found out on a Thursday, and our first appointment was Monday morning in Toronto. So we packed our bags and off we went. We planned on having a natural birth, but everything with Maisie, planning-wise, we've done the opposite. I wanted to maintain a really healthy, active pregnancy, and I was on bed rest. And then I wanted to have a natural birth, and it was a planned C-section. So, and of course I wanted to be at home, and we were in Toronto. So Maisie arrived by C-section at 38 and 2 weeks. So I made it to my due date, and she was born at 4 pounds, full term. And so she was a little tiny thing. We knew that she was going to be tiny. Out of our whole pregnancy, we had 45 ultrasounds. Wow. And normally you would have 2. So we had 45 ultrasounds. We didn't find out the sex. So Maisie was a surprise for us that we were having a little girl. We gave birth at Mount Sinai Hospital, which is directly across the street from Sick Kids. So if anything had to happen, we were right there. We stayed at the NICU at Mount Sinai for 2.5 weeks, and finally were able to go home. We had the all clear to go home. And in Maisie fashion, nothing is done in a small way. So we had a private medical flight back to Moncton City NICU. So they put her in this like big plastic tube for infants on flights. She was one of the first kids to go in this tube, so we had all the nurses and all the doctors wondering what this thing was. So Maisie's forever known at the Moncton City Hospital as like, "Oh, you're the family that arrived from Toronto with the kid in the missile." So, and that was Maisie's big arrival. So her and I came back to the Maritimes on a private jet. That was her first flight.
Does a cow say? What does a cow say? What does a rooster say? Cock-a-doodle-doo, good girl. What does a cat say?
At 6 months old, I went into her room. She had slept in that morning. And my husband actually had called from work and asked how the baby was doing. I said, well, she's still sleeping, but I'm watching her on the monitor. Everything's fine. He's like, I don't know. I just have a feeling you should go in and check on her. So I did, and I couldn't wake her up. So I found her unresponsive. She was still breathing, luckily. And I kept my calm, which is surprising. And I changed her, and I brought her out to the kitchen and threw water on her, and I couldn't wake her up. So that's when I called 911. And they brought her immediately into the hospital, and she was first diagnosed with failure to thrive, meaning she wasn't gaining weight because she was vomiting so much, and it was just this constant catch up. We were going through the hamster wheel of like feeding and throwing up, and she wasn't going anywhere with that. So we were admitted for failure to thrive, where they inserted an NG tube and were feeding her that way. Yeah. Maisie's medication regime, we started off with just a little dose of Lasix, which is like a water pill, as everyone knows it of, in the beginning for her heart, to make sure fluid stayed away from her lungs. And then once the 6-month mark hit, that's when we introduced 2 other medications, which are life-sustaining medications for her, and it's sodium bicarb, which is baking powder or baking soda, and sodium phosphate. And those are 2 things that we have in our bodies that are constantly being regulated by our kidneys. And with Maisie's condition, her kidneys spill both of those, so we have to replace them. So now, as we come along to where she is 3.5, Maisie is on 11 different medications that we have to give 5 times a day. So it's a lot.
It must be stressful when you're not around, because you'd know the timetable, what the dosage is, so to trust somebody else.
My husband and I know her medications by heart, and we know the doses by heart, and we have been given the responsibility from the pediatrics team as well as our pharmacist we know her best. So we know when she needs to go up on medications and down on medications. And it's kind of surreal that we've taken on that responsibility, but no one knows her like we do. Yeah. So yes, and it's hard to get other people on board, and it's nerve-wracking, and it's pretty intimidating when you see this amount of medication that you have to give to her, and it all goes through her G-tube in her belly, so she doesn't taste any of it. But it seems a little overwhelming, but it's not as scary as one would think. Once you've done it one time, it's like, okay, I got the hang of this, and we have a great team behind us.
Do you want to go to sleep?
No.
Do you want to go to Jenny's?
No.
Do you love mommy?
No.
Do you love daddy?
No.
Do you love Maisie?
No.
I love older names. I work in long-term care homes. And my mom was reading through a list and found the name Maisie. And it hit me because one of the ladies I used to care for, she was 4 feet nothing. She was a spitfire, and her name was Maisie. So as soon as I heard the name, I knew that our little girl was obviously a spitfire, and she was going to be really, really tiny. So it was absolutely fitting. So Maizie and Rae is after my grandfather. Okay. So Maizie Rae.
Say cheese. Say cheese. Cheese. Cheese.
Maisie her first major surgery, she was 10 months old. She had a G-tube and a muscle and skin biopsy done at one time. It was supposed to be day surgery, and we ended up being admitted for a month at IWK. From then on, she regained everything she had lost, and we actually were not hospitalized for almost a year. Then we hit another roadblock. We noticed she started walking funny, as if her shoes were too small for her. Very slight, no one else would really notice. We brought her down to our family physician, and just because of with Maisie's complications, she thought it would be best if we went down to IWK and did some imaging to make sure there was no stress fractures, because she was a 2-year-old and they'd climb things and fall from things. just to make sure there's no stress factors and whatnot. But unfortunately, with imaging for a toddler, so you have to sedate. After the sedation, that's when we hit another major roadblock. So Maisie went into that appointment walking and talking, and she hasn't walked or talked since. So, and that's all to do with this mitochondrial disease.
Yeah. Awesome, but can you pass me Rory?
Yeah.
Rory's from Make-A-Wish too.
To go.
Here's Rory.
Holy, that's a cool one.
Yep. That's Rory from Make-A-Wish, and that's who presented Maisie with her hot tub. Hold on there, kiddos.
You're going to be living in that hot tub.
Oh, yeah. She loves swimming. So we go to the Y and go swimming all the time, don't we? Hey? Are you excited? Yeah?
Yeah?
Nice tongue. I like that tongue. You silly girl.
We waited for about 2.5 years to get an actual diagnosis. We kind of hovered and we knew that it was a metabolic condition. We didn't have a diagnosis until just recently. And we found out she has mitochondrial disease, complex 1 deficiency. And unfortunately, there's really not a lot. It's a progressive degenerative disease. So we just truly, I never thought I could actually really mean to say this, but we live day by day. We have no idea what tomorrow is going to look like. So far, she's been doing great the last 3 weeks. And she's thriving and she's happy and smiling still for everything that she's been through. So we just let her take the lead, and we just follow her and support her whenever we can. She puts so much effort in.
I'm Maisie.
Who's Maisie? Who's Maizie Rae? Does that name sound familiar?
That would be me, Mama.
We don't even say to Maisie that we're going to the hospital, so we're going to go see our friends, because that's what they are to her. We have spent, I wish I knew the hours, I wish I knew the days and months that we've spent at the hospital. Her first year of life, her first admission, she was only 3 weeks old, sorry. So she was 3 weeks old for her first admission, and that was just with a simple cold. So they have seen her from the NICU at 3 weeks, and then up until now, she's 3.5 years. So they've watched her grow up. They saw her take some of her first steps, say her first words. They've been with us from the very beginning. And their staff have literally held me up when I was on 30 plus hours of no sleep and in trauma happening, and staff has been called in from their homes because they know Maisie, and we get the special treatment there. Yeah.
Have you built any friendships with some of them?
Oh my gosh, yes. The nurses and staff, I said, in the best way, we've totally broken down the patient-staff stereotypical relationship, and they are friends, and we hug each other when we see each other, and it's not nurse so-and-so. We're on first name basis, and we have become friends, and one of the nurses was our next door neighbor in our neighborhood, so we go trick-or-treating at their house and give Christmas gifts to each other. That's how well we know them. You know that you have a really great team behind you. When the last time we were admitted, I was holding Maisie, trying to keep her calm. One nurse was feeding me toast by hand. The other nurse was holding a juice box for me. And then because we were leaving on a life flight, I had another nurse go around and find toothbrushes and toothpaste and pack our bags, and then give me her lunchbox to put Maisie's medication in. That's how they were just taking clothes off their backs to give us. So having a wonderful care team that I know I can trust with Maisie, they know her inside and out, but to have them just bend over backwards for us, there's nowhere else I want to be.
Yeah. One more. One, two, three.
My husband and I will just have moments where we sit back and laugh and we're like, never thought that this would be our life. I mean, we were the type of people that when we found out we were pregnant, I was extremely healthy. I ate vegan my entire pregnancy even. Like, I was so strict and active, and we did all the right things. But no one can really prepare you for this life that the hand that we were dealt. And people always say that, like, you're so strong, how do you do it? That I wasn't given a choice. And it's not really about being strong, she is leading our way, and we just follow her lead. But yeah, the mundane things, we have a new appreciation for the little things. Like when kids take their first step or say their first words or want to have a conversation, sometimes I'll see other people out and they'll just half listen to their child talking about rambling on or whatnot. And you don't realize how precious those moments are because those moments were taken away from us. Yeah. Financially, I mean, for us, so when I found out I was pregnant with Maisie, I left work one afternoon for my 20-week ultrasound. I was really happy. My mom came down for it. And then from that afternoon onward, I didn't work again because I was put off on sick leave, stress leave until this baby was born. So immediately was off work, and then I had my maternity leave. And then a year goes by, and we were just starting to get into the thick of things. So I had to put my career on hold, and I work in long-term care, people with memory disability. So I put my whole career on hold. We had one income home. My husband was still fortunate enough to continue working, but then comes the fight for financial support and medical support. And fight is a nice way of putting it because she doesn't fit in any box, and no medical complex child fits in any box at all. And our system's made up of boxes. So because Maisie was doing so well and she didn't look sick, she also didn't qualify for a lot of financial support. As the disease progressed, you're stressed enough as having a medically frail child, but then you have to be the mom, the nurse, the social worker, the advocate on top of it. So everything, all of her equipment, including her feeding pump, her specialty food that she requires. She now has a wheelchair we had to wait almost a year for. She has a stander. All of this equipment, I think we're up to like $20,000 at least in equipment. She does physio every week, and even just the little things like going in for parking at the hospital. So we usually go to the hospital 3 times a week, and that adds up, especially where you have to live a certain distance away from the hospital to save all your receipts to hand them in for income tax. But we don't live far enough away, yet we still have to park there. So in our first year of Maisie in the hospital, we had up to $900 in parking.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's just like a fragment of, and then hospital stays and flights to Toronto unexpectedly and things like that. So she's an expensive kid. Yeah. And going forward, because we know that Maisie's condition is genetic, my husband and I are going forward and starting IVF to have another child. And we're doing this because they can test embryos before they're implanted. So that's another cost that we are swallowing to help not have another child sick with this burden. She doesn't deserve this illness. Nobody does. Maisie is she's a very unique little girl. Most people assume little girls love pink and princess things. Maisie loves the wind and the rain. She loves snowstorms. She loves bubbles. She loves bugs. She loves water, and she loves going on her Bappa's sailboat. So anything to do with the elements, she loves. There was one time that she actually snuck out onto the back deck during a rainstorm, and she just sat there and had the rain hitting her. That's the things that she loves. So it's very simple things, and even toys. She was never a kid who loved toys. She loves people. So as long as you have a face and a voice, she will be your best friend. Yeah. Scott's wonderful. Maisie is daddy's girl, big time. She likes me, but I've been home with her for 3 years, so when daddy walks through the door, like, her whole soul brightens up. I'm the emotional one, and I throw my soul into everything, and Scott is our rock. He keeps us calm and collected, and will ask the right questions and ask questions I couldn't even come up with. Things like that. He just is on top of everything, and he's pretty much super dad and super husband. He working full time and then being a medical dad on top of it. And a medical girl dad. He loves being a girl dad. Daddy's the best.